Rune Factory 2: A Fantasy Harvest Moon, the aptly named follow-up to Marvelous's original Rune Factory. Rune Factory 2 looked to be another experimental take on this fantasy plus farming adventure, rather than a continuation to improve on the issues of the first game. So you can end up wasting weeks of in-game time before you actually till enough land to unlock the first dungeon. I've heard horror stories of people not being able to finish Misty Bloom until like year 3 or 4 in the game. Getting 2,000 pieces of wood? Well, good luck doing this for hours. I did this for about 2 or 3 hours and got about 1k wood. At least that's how I looked at it to be. I remember famously saying Rune Factory is a bad game, but I honestly don't know how this game reviewed as well as it did. And at the end of the day, I really did not like this game. And to some extent, yeah, it still is. Maybe for its time it was revolutionary for the genre, but today it is a very stale and stiff experience. However, I really feel like I need to apologize to it after playing Rune Factory 2. After all, it's been how long since I made that original Rune Factory review? Wow, really? What have I gotten done in that time? Well, a review of Rune Factory 4 Special, my Rune Factory 5 review, Rune Factory 3 Special was announced, and so was Rune Factory 6 in giant air quotes. And, well, what else happened? What else did I go through in that time frame instead of literally do anything but talk about Rune Factory 2? Henshin! Right, well, before I end up watching all of the Reiwa era of Kamen Rider and before Rune Factory Not 6's release, let's finally get myself caught up and talk about Rune Factory 2. I personally doubt we will see a Rune Factory 2 special anytime soon, or well, at all. So this may be the best time to finally get all of this out about the game now that I have time to do so. So, after all this time, let us now talk about Rune Factory 2, and why I think it's probably the worst Rune Factory game in the series that I've played so far. Rune Factory 2 starts with your total fare of an amnesiac protagonist that has thrusted into the farm life against their will. No, like, seriously, I don't think I've seen a protagonist in this series get forced into farm labor as much as Kyle. It's kinda jarring, if not comedic to say the least. From here, your goal is to, what is your goal here again? Right, survive. You are given no real direction as to what your goal is. You're basically just kind of vibing out in this town until, well, something happens. Which is kind of the most unnerving part of the game, really. You are just some amnesiac, and the town's response to it is basically kidnapping you and make you assimilate into their town without giving you any real help to regain your memories. In a sense, this game is kind of a horror title outside of it being like a horror to play. You kind of just wake up, work the fields, give gifts to people, rinse and repeat. It's not a bad formula, but it never really feels like you're actually working towards anything. I almost feel like I'm trapped in some sort of hell, suffering for my sins of calling the original Rune Factory a bad game. You're probably now saying, well, Gamma, what about the dungeon crawling? And you're right, what about the dungeon crawling? There isn't any. Well, at least not for you right now. You see, you can go to several dungeons, but you can't really explore them too much, because there is a giant sign or something in the way that our hero is too big to get around. You know, not like we could, I don't know, destroy it or anything. Nope, we just can't explore 75% of any dungeon we have access to. At least there's a pirate island for us to explore, I guess, but for this giant chunk of the game, you might as well think you're playing a watered-down Story of Seasons title. I get it, there's no real story reason for you to go into these dungeons, but man, isn't that a problem? Isn't the whole point to have us explore these dungeons? Why even have them there? Well, these complaints are addressed, but not in a way that I like, and we still have a bit of time to talk about that before we get there. Now the farming. This is arguably the best part of the game. It actually feels really refined from the previous entry. Hell, the game even starts you out with a fully upgraded tool set. Name a Story of Seasons game that lets you have that. Yep, from the start, you have the ability to till your fields to the best of your ability. Which is nice as it lets you streamline the crop process and makes giving gifts to people a whole lot easier. The only issue is, well, the characters in Rune Factory 2 are all pretty bland. Like a lot of good designs, all of personalities as shallow as a puddle. Which is a step back from the first game, as a lot of the characters, while having some pretty bland writing, at least felt unique to each other. Here, a lot of them feel like they tend to blend in. I had a really hard time picking out who I wanted to marry from this crowd of people, as very few of them made me feel any real connection. It's a good thing I streamed the game and my chat bullied me into marrying objectively best girl, Alicia. No, this isn't Stockholm Syndrome. Alicia is best girl, and we need more Alicia fan art out there. I also need more Gamma X Alicia art as well. Wait, no, stop. That's not why we are here. I am here to say this game is blander than a cup of rice pudding, and I love rice pudding. This comparison made much more sense in my head. I'm moving on to the next topic. Alright, so let's now address the elephant in the room of when the game actually starts. Once you get married, your wife is now removed from the game's ecosystem of characters, which I found to be really weird, as she will no longer go out and about in the town or interact with anyone. She will remain in your home at all times, which comes in handy when you marry a witch who can literally control the weather. But the game now wants you to have a child. When do you know if you have said child? Is there an event where your wife finally leaves the house and goes to the clinic? Nope. You just talk to her randomly and she's pregnant. Cool. At least there's an event for when your child is born, right? Right? You have to notice when her sprite is a tiny bit different and talk to her. And surprise, you're now a father. This is the event that advances the game, right? No. Now you have to build a school. Once you build the school, the game finally advances to somewhere after 12 to 20 hours of gameplay. On a stormy night, our hero apparently hits her head and suddenly remembers why they came into this town several years ago. That's right, we've been living here in an amnesiac fog for years! Our protagonist, or well, our former protagonist, decides to leave to finally do what he came here to do, and the game's perspective now goes to that of our child. That's right! Everything you have played up until now has been nothing but an over-drawn-out tutorial that can make any modern Story of Seasons title blush. From here, the game takes the shape of something completely different, something that could resemble that of a good game, if the game didn't constantly keep tripping over its own 2 feet. So, what's the difference here of playing as our kid? Well, for starters, we still have to farm the land. Our mom gives us all the tools that are totally not deadbeat dad use, and the problem is, apparently he hasn't been farming for years, as they've all fallen into disrepair. Yeah. Remember the game giving us fully upgraded tools at the start, and we've been using them for like the last 10 plus hours of gameplay? Well, say goodbye to those! You now have your bog standard tools that you would start any Bokujo type game with. This takes farming from a streamlined experience to a slog once again. I will never understand the choice to actively punish the player for basically starting the game! Why in the world would I want to keep going if my quality of life is just going to diminish so greatly? I'm actually losing it recording this, thinking back as to how stupid that was! Well, thankfully there are a few cool things, I guess. The school aspect of the game really opens up a lot of cool things. You see, a lot of the bachelorettes you didn't marry ended up having kids of their own, and they are now part of the school system, which I think is really neat, and it's the first time the game does something to really expand the world of the game. While the kids aren't anything to write home about, they still add a pinch of salt to this incredibly bland dish. You are not required to go to school, but school is where you finally learn a lot of the factory stuff in this Rune Factory title. You learn new recipes here for tools, dishes, and potions that you can use to further your adventure. Honestly, I really dig this. I love this idea of our protagonist having to be in school learning different things about the world. It's just a shame that even this concept is also very shallow as well. See, the school is mainly a suggestion, there is no real penalty for skipping classes, and once you learn some core recipes, you really don't have much of a need for it outside of some flavor. Let's see, what else? Well, there is a dating and marriage aspect in this part of the game where you can marry one of your fellow classmates or school-age friends around town. The game calls it a mock wedding, but yeah, it's there so you don't lose a major part of the game's core mechanic loop. It is a bit weird, considering depending on who your mom is, you can get mock married to your cousin. But I don't have the energy to go into this. You can finally explore the dungeons now too! Since we are small enough, we can finally squeeze past those signs our dad for some reason couldn't just duck under or something. So that's cool. The game finally begins in earnest after nearly 20 or so hours in. And this is my issue with the game. By the time the game got arguably good, I was just burnt out with it. I was tired. You do so much to actually get to this part of the game, you just don't feel like going on further. I will say this right now, I did not beat Rune Factory 2. Sorry, Dad, I didn't feel like finding out what happened to you because we had to sit through an entire game's length of you just being an amnesiac farmer where nothing happened. I got through the first couple of dungeons, but after that, I just didn't feel like it anymore. I was tired. I was done. I couldn't really find the best way to put my feelings into words until almost like 3 years and 20 Kamen Rider serials later. But hey, we finally got here. Rune Factory 2 is by far, the worst experience I have had in the Rune Factory series to date. And I don't think a Rune Factory 2 special could fix the issues I have with the game. Everything about it that bothers me is broken on the fundamental level, which sucks because once you get into the second generation of the game, it actually begins to resemble something of a fun experience. But the fact you have to go through so much just to get to this part just leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. It just made the entire game unfun. Made me want to stop playing when I got to it, when I realized everything I did up to this point was one giant waste of my time. Which, again, sucks because I feel like there could have been something here to make Rune Factory 2 really special. Sadly, it does not stick the landing.